Reza.
Anything else? Can you give us an update, please, on Joe Willock?
Yeah, Joe had a scan yesterday, which is an early scan. Usually I think we'd leave it a little bit longer. Relatively good news on the scan. Don't think it's a serious injury, but it is early, so I am sort of half, we will rescan again, I think, in a few days' time just to confirm that, but it doesn't look too bad at the moment.
And is it his thigh?
Yes.
Transfer window closes at 11 o'clock tonight. Will you be bringing anybody in?
I don't know currently. There is still time and there is still work going on to try and see what we can do in the last few hours of the window. So while there's time, there's hope.
So as we speak on Friday morning, you're not closed for business in or out?
No, I don't think we'll be closed right till the end in both ways. So there may be one or two of the younger players going out. We're looking for loans for 2 or 3 of those. So let's see what happens in the last few hours.
How frustrating has the last week or the last few days of the transfer window been? Because there is a possibility that nobody comes in.
Yeah, there is. I think with such short time left, it is looking difficult. I think, this window, as I said many times, has been difficult. Continues to be difficult for us. We're in a really difficult situation with the PSR situation and available funds, attracting the right players and the players that we think can make a difference. That's such a delicate spot for us. We've got to try and hit it right, and if we don't, then probably doing nothing is, as frustrating as that is probably the best option.
If you have to go into the next part of the season with the squad that you have now, based on what you've just said there, will you be happy, or will you still feel that some of the needs that you've had this summer haven't been addressed and it could be a risk?
Yeah, a bit of both, Reza, to be honest, a bit of both. I think there'll be a feeling that we have a good squad and we like all the players that we have in our squad, but there is a feeling, of course, that there's a few areas of the squad that we felt we needed to strengthen. So I think we'll carry those emotions depending on what happens in the last few hours.
A couple of questions about the match on Sunday. Spurs coming to St James's Park, and like you, they are unbeaten after 2 Premier League games, 4 points. What do you make of the way they've played in their opening fixtures?
Yeah, very good. They continue to be a team that I like to watch. Very attractive style, very fluid, different with their fullbacks and how they play. So yeah, I'm a big fan. I think they've recruited well too. They've gone youthful, but they've signed some really talented younger players. Of course, Dominic Solanke, someone we know really well. I think he's an outstanding player. So I think they were good last year, but I think they've added quality. So I think they'll be even better this season.
But you've got good recent memories of this fixture, haven't you? Who knows what way it will go on Sunday, but the 6-1 and the 4-0, they were special days for you. Great results, great performances too. Yeah,
they were. I mean, two great days for us. I think last year, contrasting games against Tottenham, you had the away game that was really disappointing, and then the home game, which was equally as good the other way. I think we've always had entertaining games against them. I think the two teams that styles create those types of games. Now for us, we've got to make sure that we get on top of the details and we have the same mindset that we did last season, where our commitment to what we were trying to do was excellent. We were really ruthless and efficient on the day with the chances that came. We took them, and we look back fondly, but of course that counts for nothing in this one.
Thanks, Matthew. Nick?
Eddie, just on Kieran Trippier announced his international retirement, obviously on Friday. A player you've managed for a lot of years now. What do you make of that decision? And it kind of feels like could look like maybe a bit of a changing of the guard with Tino Livramento getting a first call up as well. How do you view that decision?
Well, if it was right for Kieran, that's the most important thing, and he's no doubt thought long and hard about his decision, and we back it totally. I think it's a time for celebration, really, of what he achieved for England, what he did. The early part of his England career I was watching from afar and really proud, because the player that I knew from signing him at Burnley had developed into a full international, and an outstanding player at various World Cups and European Championships. So was really proud to see how he'd taken his career to that level. And then, of course, latterly starting to work with him again, saw the qualities, and he continued to excel on the international scene. So I think he should be really proud of everything that he's done, and look back with some really great memories.
Sure. You described your players as ruthless going back to April and that 4-0 victory against Tottenham. You no doubt you're looking for the same performance on Sunday.
Yeah, it'll be a different game. I think, as always, teams evolve, we evolve, they evolve. So I think it'll be a different game. But I think the fundamentals of that performance in terms of our attitude to the game and what we delivered that day against a very good technical team was really good. So yeah, you don't always get everything going in your favour as it did that day. We scored 2 really quick goals which changed the momentum of the match. But Tottenham in that game showed their qualities and showed their technical deliveries of a really high level. So we're going to have to be, it goes without saying in the Premier League, but we have to be at our very best to win.
Thanks, Nick. Andy?
Well, Neddy, there was a lot of talk after Wednesday night, after the League Cup, about the format of the draw. I just wondered if you had any thoughts on that as well, given the, do we call it seedings these days or not?
It's really interesting because I had no idea what was going on.
Like
so
a lot of us, I think.
yeah, but I didn't even know that there was a change. So I only saw, I was with Lee after the game. Lee can vouch for this. We just caught the very tail end of the draw and saw our draw, but I didn't know what had happened initially.
Just moving on to another player, Sandro Tonali. Obviously, you've talked about the players' support for him. We'll come back to that in a second. But the fans' support, you saw that at the end. I'm told that War Flags are going to be doing a little bit in support of him. Obviously, his first home game back for 316 days, I think it is. I just wondered what you thought ahead of Sunday and a potential show of support like that for him.
Yeah, I mean, I said after the game, I was so pleased to see the number of Italian flags, that obviously in support of Sandro, and you could feel the warmth from the away fans towards him, and you could feel the genuine love and affection, and also I think that the key thing here is you could see the outpouring of emotion from Sandro to the supporters at the end of the game, and I think that's just quite rare to see these days when players get emotional. But for Sandro, there would have been a huge release on Wednesday. He would have been bottling a lot of things up, which you have to. You have to conduct yourself in a certain way, day to day. But he would have loved being back on the football pitch.
You've talked about how the players have shown support for him over the last 10 months or so. Can you kind of give us any examples of how they've shown support? I know Sandro referenced Bruno, referenced Joe Linton as well. Have you witnessed any kind of shows of support for him?
Yes, I have, and I've witnessed lots of things, which has been great to see, from the group coming together and sort of supporting someone in a really difficult moment. I always think that's inspiring. I don't think it's right for me to maybe go into too much detail on that, but I see it on a daily basis also, how some of the players, of course Sandro will be closer to some players than others, that's just how it is in a football squad, have really shared the burden with him and kept him positive when he's no doubt been having a difficult day. So we've seen all that first at hand, and that's the beauty of being in a team sport. You're not isolated, you're not alone, and that's been vital for Sandro.
I ask you this at the end of every transfer window, but how delighted are you to see the back of this one in particular, given everything that's happened? I just wonder, what lessons do you think that Newcastle as a club can learn from this window being difficult, in your words?
Well, I think the emergence of PSR as sort of, I don't think it, for a lot of football clubs, and we're not alone in that, I think the actual workings of the window's totally changed. But I think it took time for everyone to realise how that would change, and certainly for me as the manager, it's when you're spending 90% of your time on the training pitch with the players, and then to this new dynamic to totally throw everything that you're doing and change the way you're recruiting players is a big shift. So I think through time, people, and if the rules remain the same, will get used to that. But it's obviously a change for us, but it's of course a change for everybody, media, supporters, because transfer business and under its current format will never be the same again.
Just one on Spurs on Sunday. You talk about the kind of fundamentals of Newcastle United not changing. One of those fundamentals is obviously the intensity, the high intensity. How do you get that intensity, that level of intensity that you showed at times last season at St James's Park, back this season and back on Sunday, do you think?
Yeah, I think it's something you have to protect and work towards every single day, because it's the players can't just turn up and perform that way in isolation. So it's something we hone and work on continuously. It is related, of course, to our fitness. You have to be really, really super fit to deliver that style of play for 90 minutes. So that's something I think we're working towards. I've said it's no secret. We've got a group of players that probably aren't at their absolute optimum fitness-wise. I think the international break, providing that those players that are a little bit short of where they need to be stay with us. If they don't, then we're under no control of that. But very quickly, we've got to find our best physical levels to produce that style of play. And of course, the crowd are important in that, because I think they elevate our levels from sort of here to here when we're all in tune and on the same page.
Just very, very finally, away from football, a Newcastle United fan called Matty Smith is doing ultra marathons between every single Premier League club. I think it's something like 800 miles over the course of 26 days. He finishes at St James's Park today. It's all in aid of suicide prevention. I just wondered what you, kind of as a Newcastle United manager, made of such a feat and obviously such a cause as well.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's an incredible feat by the sound of it. You'd have to repeat it for me to fully understand it. But that sounds like a lot of running and a lot of physical preparation needed. I think the cause, most importantly, is absolutely vital. I think that is something I really am passionate about, supporting, because I think you see it with a lot of the young men in particular, really high rates of suicide, and it's something that we'd love to change, and I'd certainly be vocal in supporting that.
Thanks, Eddie.
Thanks, Andy. Nisha?
Morning, Eddie.
Morning.
Talked numerous times about this difficult window, but it changes hour to hour, day to day. But were you expecting more business to have been done by this point by the club?
I think expecting, I don't know is the right word. Hopeful, yeah, of course, because I think when we start out and you're going into the window, you know, there's various parts of the squad that needed looking at and needed work and needed to try and improve. But it's the same wish. I will say this numerous times. It's the same wish for everybody working internally for Newcastle. There's no one part that's going, no, we don't want to support that. We do, all together, and we want to find the right solutions. But they've got to be the right solutions. I think the worst thing we can do is bring the wrong players into the football club. That would harm us for a long time. So it's always about the right players. And if you can't find the right players, then probably best to do nothing.
Your focus is this club. But when you look at, say, clubs like West Ham and Brighton, the business they've been doing and how they are going to be pushing around where you want to be, is that a concern for you if it doesn't go your way today?
Of course, because I think if your competition are improving and getting stronger and you're not, that's a huge concern. But again, Brighton historically have sold players. They brought in a lot of revenue and income, and we haven't. So we're in a difficult situation regarding PSR, and that is the major problem for us, that we can't do what other teams are doing currently. And yes, if that makes the challenges harder for us, and that makes it harder for me, but that's the environment we're in, and we have to try and find a way to still be successful.
A window is as much about keeping your big players as it is about bringing new ones in. Are you still confident that you will keep those big players for your team, like Kieran Trippier, like Miguel Almiron?
I hope so, with the length of time we have left, because if we were to lose anybody now, it'd be very difficult to replace them. So I don't envisage anything happening regarding any of the established players in the squad between now and the end of the window.
And just finally for me, I mean, you do have quite a lot of goalkeepers at the moment, and Martin Dubravka mentioned on social media, it was a post that referenced being stressed about his job. Have you spoken to him, and how are you managing all those goalkeepers you have at the moment?
I've got no knowledge of the thing that you're talking about with Martin. Martin seems in a good place. He's had concussion. So that's something we've been monitoring due to a training ground collision with a player. But hopefully he's nearing a full return to fitness. But the goalkeeper situation is fine. I think there's a good team of goalkeepers there that are working and pushing each other daily.
Thank you.
Thanks, Nisha. Written guys, we'll try and add in some Sundays as well, so if you don't have to ask a question during this section, then please try and avoid it. Start with Damien.
Hi, Eddie.
Hi, Damien.
Eddie, Newcastle broke in the top 6 2 seasons ago. Villa did it last season. But do you think PSR is preventing a club from doing that on a sustained basis?
Probably making it more challenging, I'd say. I think it all depends on your income and your revenue streams and how much you can improve those in a really short period of time. Now, we're finding it difficult due to a number of reasons. That someone better qualified than me can give you more direct answers. But the reality is it is difficult for us to recruit players currently, and it has been in this window and probably will be for a few future windows. I think beyond that, the future should be brighter, but PSR is probably hitting us more short-term in the here and now than it will do, hopefully, in the future.
Given all the caveats you've mentioned about this window earlier, if you weren't to bring anyone else in today, there's an argument that the squad is perhaps weaker than it was at the start of the summer. What would your view be on that?
I think you can make an argument for that. I can't. I'm not going to fight you too much on that because it's all opinion based. I think all I can do is say that we will try and get the very best out of the squad that we have, and that is my job. And it's always been the way that I've looked at it. You can't control everything. You can't do things you can't do. So what you can do is get the very, very best and try to get the very best out of every single person in the squad and maximise their ability and your ability. That's always how I've seen the job as managing and coaching, and we'll gladly take on that challenge.
Thanks, Damien. We'll go to Lee and then Craig.
Morning, Eddie. Just on your message to the supporters, there's obviously a lot of frustration already there on the prospect of not bringing anyone in. What would you sort of relay to the fans on that case?
Yeah, I understand and I share it, and that's why I say we're all in it together. I think from ownership to me to the supporters, we need one united cause, and the cause has to be against everybody else that we're playing. What we can't do as a football club is tear ourselves apart. You know, we have to be united now more than ever. So that starts from me to the board, as I say, to the supporters. And however, I say challenging the conditions, but however, whatever frustration people will feel, it's the biggest thing is for me to get behind the players and try and help the players in every way. And then, of course, on match days, the supporters, as they have done since day one, since I've been here, do the same. And I think we're a formidable force when we are linked together and really strong and united.
I mean, for you, is there any kind of personal frustration? Because you'll have obviously put a lot of hours off the training field on recruitment. Is there any personal frustration for you, or do you just have to kind of move on from it quickly?
Yeah, there has been, of course. As you say, is the hours that you put in for in this part of the job, the hours you put in for what you sometimes get back. It can be hours and hours of watching players to only find out you can't do the deal. That goes with the territory, and you sort of understand that. There's been no lack of trying from anyone connected with the club. It's been there. The effort's been there. But I think I've learned through time to sort of shut down quite quickly when you can't do something and the option doesn't become available anymore. You concentrate on what you can control, which is the players we have here. They're always the most important people.
Just on the game itself, obviously we've had a very decent start, 4 points from 6. Is this the first kind of acid test, though, going in against one of the potential top 4 contenders?
I think every game's an acid test. There is no easy games. We found that at Bournemouth. Very, very difficult game. I think we've done well to get 4 points so far because we haven't been at our absolute best. That's a good sign. But we're going to need to be at our absolute best against Tottenham to get anything.
Thanks, Lee. Craig?
Morning, Eddie. When we sat down with you in Germany, you said that your happiness was perhaps dependent on the new working dynamic behind the scenes. Where are you at with that? And if you finish the window without anyone else coming in, how will you reflect? Are you happy?
I think the two things are totally separate. My happiness against what we're able to do in the transfer market, they're two totally different things. I am enjoying my work. I am happy. It is a challenging period, no doubt about that. We haven't had the window that we wanted to have. No denying that. But my job is to continue to give my best for the players we have here.
The pursuit of Marquis was obviously, a lot of it was played out in public. Why hasn't that happened? Do you think, why hasn't that deal why hasn't it been possible?
I'm still not going to comment on individual deals. That's not fair to other players, other clubs. I don't think it's right.
And how is that dynamic? You used that word in the summer where there's dynamic. How has that dynamic worked, that new dynamic?
Which one?
Behind the scenes, in terms of the new working relationships.
Yeah, I mean, look, we're working well, and in respect to our relationships, and I think that's fine. There's no issues there. Of course, turning that into transfers, that's. I think I've said all summer that I'm not involved in negotiations of players. That is separate to me. So hopefully I've answered your question.
Thanks, Craig. Got the Chris and then Luke.
Morning, Eddie. I know you said you don't want to talk about individuals, but there's been a lot of talk about one specific player. Has it all been a case of just one player you've been looking at? Have there been alternatives that you've tried to sign?
Without going into the individual situation, we've tried to sign several players. Yes, never been about one player. It can never be about one player, because as soon as you're in that position, then your negotiation strength is over. So, no, we've tried for several targets, but it still has to be the right player, though. And there isn't unlimited number of players. It's not like you can, we'll just go on to the next one, because then the quality dilutes, and then you have to question whether you're doing the right thing for the long-term future of the club. There isn't a bottomless pit of money. We're not able to spend that way. Everything that we do has a long-term consequence. So you've got to be very sure whatever you do is right for the long-term future and short-term future of the club.
And you said heading into the summer that at that point there wasn't a sporting director, and that the transfer committee would just work as normal. Obviously, the new sporting director came in at the start of July, but would having had a sporting director earlier and going in that period, do you think that would have made it an easier window?
Yeah, you can't deal in hypotheticals. Possibly yes, but we just have to deal with the reality of what it was.
Thanks, Chris. Luke?
Sometimes there are difficult press conferences as Newcastle United manager, and this is probably one of them. I also appreciate there's probably other people at the football club who could maybe answer this, and hopefully they will in due course. But I think for the first time, supporters feel like the club has failed a little bit in this transfer window. What is your response to that, please?
Yeah, look, I can't. I'm not going to sit here and go, "Oh, it's been a brilliant transfer window for us." I think everyone would look at me and think, "I'm not sure he's telling the truth." And I do try as far as I can to tell the truth, but it's not been through the want of trying from anybody's perspective. And I think for me to sit here and say that would be totally wrong as well. Everyone has tried really, really hard to improve the squad, to make sure we got a chance of success. And I don't want to repeat myself to previous questions either, but you'll understand it has to be the right player at the right price. We could easily be sitting here with 4 or 5 signings, but if they're all the wrong players, that doesn't do anyone any favours either. So it is a difficult balance, and yes, it's been a tough window, and if it remains the same now, we'll crack on regardless and try and have a great season while learning the lessons of what's happened.
I think one of the other things, and Craig has alluded to it, and Chris, is these eggs all in one basket so-called approach. Would you refute that was actually happening, that you've always had other options?
Absolutely. But I'm never going to tell you what they are, and you'll understand why that will be the case. But it's never about one player. We've tried for numerous players. But as I said, there's not a bottomless pit of names. I will say that at the same time. But there wouldn't be for any other club in our position. There's probably 4 or 5 players that you go through, and once you get to the end of that, you're then going, is this player of sufficient quality?
You don't win or lose a season in the transfer window. You don't win a transfer window. What sort of season are you still aiming to have, regardless of transfers in or out?
Yeah, and that's important to remember, because the games are won on the pitch. Now, of course, the transfer windows are to give you a better chance, percentage-wise, of success by bringing in better players. But I am going to repeat myself in the sense that the most important people we have at this football club are in the dressing room now, about to prepare to train. It's about the players you have here and making sure they're in the right mental and physical condition to play and give their best. If we can get everyone at their absolute peak, we've got a really good squad. I don't think everyone is at their absolute peak at the moment, and our job is to try and get them there, and to try and get some of our injured players back fit as quickly as possible. So we've still got the legacy of the long-term injured from last year. So we're in a position where if we can be successful now and we can start the season really well, we'll only get stronger, I think, throughout the season.
We've got hands raised from everyone in the room, so if you can avoid 2 and 3 and 4 questions, we'll still try and fit Sundays in. Go to Dominic and then Jordan.
Morning, Eddie. Since playing in the Champions League, the club have now had 2 transfer windows without arguably making a major signing. With player trading so important to the progress of clubs, are you still satisfied the club are moving in the right direction?
Yeah, when you put it like that, it's but that's the reality that the position that we've been in. But as I said, it's through the rules, really, that is so stark. It's not through the club not wanting to do anything. Yeah, so I think I've already answered the rest of it.
Has the club taken risks in terms of PSR that we're now experiencing the consequences of?
No, I don't think so. I think if you go back to when I first came to the club, PSR wasn't really talked about. It is only something that's become really relevant, I think, with the points deductions that some of the clubs suffered last year, that's brought it home to everybody how important it is not to breach PSR and how important that aspect of the game is. And now that continues to sort of be the narrative that we can't escape short term. So what can we do with that situation? We have to be very, very smart with what we do. We have to be very careful with what we do right now, because for future windows we could be hamstrung if we make the wrong decision. So there's a lot that goes into it. It's not as clear as maybe everyone thinks it is.
Okay, Jordan.
Hi Eddie, you'd mentioned the PSR situation, but were the club able to commit a substantial amount of money to sign a player this summer?
Yes, but it had to be absolutely the right player. And of course, the more the window's gone on, the right player becomes very hard to find. But you've also got to understand that with that decision impacts future windows, and it impacts our PSR situation drastically. So I think you'll understand the importance of every decision that you're making. And if you're not absolutely certain on this being the right direction to take, you can't take it. And you'll have to make that decision another day.
And just on the squad as a whole, do you feel you're in a stronger position than you were 12 months ago, or do you feel like you've fell short on that department?
No, I'm going to be positive. If we can get some of the injured players back that we have, even currently, I think the squad's in a really good position. Now that's a big if, because those players aren't back yet, and we've just lost Joe Willock, who's a massive player and someone that we thought we did have back. So it's an ever-changing situation, but I do back the players that we have, and my message is we need a united football club on every front. I'm not going to go away from that, and that's everyone. That's you guys as well, please, because it makes such a difference. The narrative can't be that we're in a difficult situation. The season's just started. We've got everything to achieve.
Thanks, Jordan. Go to Mark and then Ian.
Eddie, you mentioned about PSR and actually the transfer window changing forever. Does that mean maybe clubs need to not ask as much money as they are for certain players because the market itself is being distorted by this?
Well, I think clubs will always ask for whatever they want. It's like when you're selling your own house, no one's going to dictate the price to you. You'll dictate your own price. Whether that changes through time, whether that means transfer fees will come down, it doesn't necessarily look like it. I think the market has changed, but maybe there's not the number of players moving for smaller fees, but the bigger fees seem to be as big as ever. But again, I'm not an expert on that. But it has changed, and I think it will continue to change as everyone gets to grips with PSR fully, and let's see what the future brings on that. But I think it's a changing environment.
I know you don't want to talk about specific deals, but was it a case that with the target or one of your big targets that you didn't have the PSR headroom to go to that, or was it that you looked at the price that it went to and thought that's going to impact us too much over time, or was it that you just didn't have the PSR headroom to do that full stop, or did you take a longer term decision?
A combination of all.
Ian?
My question for the Sundays actually.
Well, yeah, we'll move on then. Kieran? Sundays as well?
No.
Yeah, we'll come to you in a second, Kieran.
Eddie, what lessons have been learned this summer?
What are you talking? What subject?
I suppose in general, has this window taught you guys a lot about the workings going forward into future windows, so maybe that this situation might not happen again?
I don't know. I don't know, because we're working under quite rigid conditions. So I don't know if there's any lessons to learn. It's more the conditions that we're working in rather than relationships. That's fine. It's more the situation that we're in.
You mentioned what a right player is for you. It's a very obvious question. What does that mean in your words?
Well, I think the right player, it's probably a good question. The right player is multi-factored, really. I think it's the right age, the right deal, as in transfer fee, the right wages, then the right player to actually come into your squad, the right positional need, loads of things. And if one of those things isn't right, especially financially for us, that puts us in a difficult position.
Okay, Louise?
Hi, Eddie. Firstly, just could you clarify one thing, please? I asked you on Tuesday about Sandro Tonali having to make 16 trips to Italy in the next 8 months, which you said wouldn't be interfering with his schedule, and that appears it won't interfere with his schedule because he's already made them. Is that actually the case? Were you being a little bit disingenuous?
I wasn't being disingenuous at all. I'm not up to date with how many trips Sandro's made to Italy and what further trips he has to make.
So has he got some more to make?
I don't know. Do you know, Lee?
I don't know, Louise. Simon?
I've actually got another question. Have you been, obviously it's been a stressful, difficult transfer window. Have you had direct conversations with the Saudi owners, and have they sort of offered you reassurances and explanations as to why this is happening?
But there's no explanations needed. The situation is based on PSR, as I've said. So I don't need an answer to that. The rules are creating that issue for us, and we're trying to work them within the conditions that the rules have set.
Thanks, Louise. Simon?
It's probably the most difficult press conference you've had in your time here. But another question on the transfers. 14 months ago, the PIF chairman said that the club wanted to be number one, selling the fans kind of an ambitious dream. Have the fans been sold a false dream about what's happened this summer? And how can you possibly take the club to number one if you're not getting a big signing every window?
I think when PIF took the club over, and I don't want to speak to for PIF because I think that's very, very difficult to do, but I think the landscape was different then to it is now. I think a lot's changed in that period of time in terms of PSR, and I don't want to keep talking about it, but I have to, because I think that's been the biggest change, the inability to spend and our need to comply within the rules, or we face points deductions. So I think that's been the biggest thing for them, and I think of course that impacts the ability to progress the club as quickly as maybe they wanted to. But I don't think the dream dies necessarily, but I think it takes a lot longer. We've got to build our revenue streams. That is the biggest thing. We've got to bring more money into the football club. However we do that, through player sales, through sponsorship, through loads of various things, that's the big thing that that we need to focus on now for the next probably 10 years. Whether I'm lucky enough to see any of that, who knows? But I think, so the dream's not over, it's just going to take a lot longer.
Okay. One of the arguments that a fan would come back to you on that is, why haven't the Saudis, with the multiple companies they own, driven sponsorships harder with their own involving their own companies? Possibly not one for you, but
probably not one for me, because I could make a mistake, because I'm not fully, and you'll understand why. It's very intricate. I think there are rules in place to stop that. So there's rules everywhere to stop clubs growing as quickly as we would want to.
Okay, that concludes this section. We'll have to be. Oh, sorry, Martin. Yeah.
Hi, Eddie.
Hi.
Has this been your most hands-off transfer window since you've been to the club? And if it has that been frustrating for you?
Yeah, it probably has. But you'll have to understand, in the majority of the other windows, it's just been, the whole structure of the club's been very different. So that's not necessarily a criticism of the structure we have now. It's just there's different personalities and there's a different way of working now. So yes, it probably has been the most hands-off I've been. But that's not necessarily a negative.
But has that been a little bit frustrating, and have you had to get used to that?
It's just a different way of working.
And you kind of alluded to this already, but how do you keep momentum going without a player coming into the club in a window that doesn't make the team better?
It's something I've been used to previously. As I said, my journey in coaching and management was never about recruiting players to make your team better. It was all about coaching to make your team better. That's always been my philosophy. Now I know that changes. I'm not stupid. As you get to clubs the size of Newcastle and an era when there's a lot of pressure to bring in players, but still at my core is coaching is my belief. This is the most powerful tool you have. So it's a time for me to go to work on the training pitch.
And last one, you can feel there's a different mood around the city regarding the club because of this window. How is the mood amongst the players at the minute?
Probably mirrors, being honest, probably mirrors the narrative created. And it's my job to shape that as in the most powerful way that I can. And what I mean by that is there's been a number of unsettled players during this window. It's not been a clear window for us in terms of just bringing players in. It's been difficult the other way as well. So I think once the window shuts, I think we'll have clarity. The players will have clarity. Right, we're all here now together for the same aim. And then I'd like to think that we will all go together until January in a pursuit of excellence and in a pursuit of success. And we have some brilliant characters in the squad. We do have a great changing room. So there's no criticism of the changing room. It's just it has been unsettling, and that's always difficult when the situation's like that.